Welcome to No Stage, Just a Chair. I'm Brian, and this is me trying to figure things out without pretending I already know how. If I sound foolish, that means it's working. The music sounds a little 80s? Good. I was basically raised on synths and questionable hair choices. And if any of this sounds familiar, pull up a chair. I think I've decided that the title of this entire podcast should be changed to Years and Years Ago, because so many of my stories start with years and years ago. So many of my frames of references are years and years ago. And I think years and years ago has become my default language because I'm realizing how much I don't think of time. Because I have friends, and I've actually done this recently. I went back and I was like, oh, I haven't talked to him in like a month or so. And I looked at text messages and I realized it's been like 19 months since we've texted. And I feel utterly ridiculous. Or I'll have a conversation with my kids and we'll talk about a TV show. And I will say, that we watched it a couple weeks ago. And the boys are like, it was 6 months ago, Dad. I don't have any frame of reference for time. I don't know why. And I'm not even going to feel apologetic about it. I'm just realizing that years and years ago is my shorthand for at some point something happened and I'm not quite sure when. So let's start with a story and a thought. When I first started doing marketing, it was an outflow from that I was traveling and playing as a musician. And I had this idea whenever it was pitched to me. The head of the label gave me this opportunity to do marketing for artists whenever they're releasing albums. And he said, what is it you need? And I said, what I need is I need 3 or 4 days either in studio or on the road with the artist, because I need to know what brand of asshole I'm dealing with. And I said that at the time. He kind of laughed about it. And I said that at the time because I think I intuitively had this thought in the back of my head. And the funny thing is 20 years later, 25 years later, it's actually become an operational part of what I do. Because then the reason I was saying it is because I didn't want to look at their website. I didn't want to do research about them before I got there, because I am that empathic person that whenever I sit down with the person, I want to understand them, not their projection, not their polished image, not what they present to the audience, not the thing that they do on stage, because I knew as a musician that what they see on stage is only about 10% of what I really am. They only see the exaggerated portions of me. They only see the readily apparent or the readily available portions of me, but they actually don't get to see, they often don't see the things that are formative and undercurrents and meaningful parts of what I am that actually help to answer the question of why I do what I do. So with the undercurrents of what I am, those are the things that I want to make decisions on. I don't want to make decisions based on the 10%. I don't want to make decisions based on what I can present well. I want to make the decisions based on what really matters to me. And when dealing with an artist, it's not just what sells. It's what carries weight. Because there's no quicker way to kill an artist than to miscalculate them. There's no quicker way to destroy a creator than to try and force them into a box that makes them easy. Those are the things that choke them. And as a result, my priority was not doing the research, feeling the temperature of the room, understanding the artist, listening, and synthesizing that information that I get in that meeting. And it evolved into this idea of when I work with businesses even. When I work with businesses, I don't look at their website before I meet with them the first time. I don't look at their pitch deck. I don't look at their one sheet. I don't look at their materials. I don't look at their branding. I'm not looking at all those things because my first experience with them, I want it to be with them, because I've realized this thing that I do my worst listening when I think I've already understood. That's when I do my worst listening. That's when I do my worst listening with my kids, when we're having a disagreement. We've all been in that meeting. We've all been in that conversation where we're listening, we're trying to figure out what's being said, and we're trying to compromise, we're trying to find a way forward. And as we're listening to the things that they're saying, instead of listening, we're formulating our next argument. We're formulating our next point. We're formulating the next idea that we have instead of actually listening. How do we get to the place of actually listening? How do we get to the place where we actually hear them? Because if we hear them, if we don't make assumptions, it's the assumptions that destroy the conversation. It's the assumptions that destroy the narrative. And it's the assumptions that destroy the power. I don't want to abandon the magic. I don't want to miss that little detail, that little spark, because, and this is a thought that I'm having right now that maybe it may be incorrect, but I'm just going to say it. When a jeweler is crafting a diamond, it's the tiny, tiny details that are the difference between bad and good. It's the tiny details that are the difference between good and great. It's the tiny details that are the difference between great and elite. And if that's the case in regards to a hardened piece of carbon that doesn't have a soul, then it's got to be much more so the case with a human who just desires to be seen and heard. Because if we give them something that they feel like is inherently them, it feels like it is inherently true, and it feels inherently powerful to them, then how much more powerful are they going to behave? Hear that. How much more powerfully are they going to behave if they feel like they can walk on a stage and be them, that they can walk into an interview and be them, they can walk into all these individual moments and feel like they can be fully them, for better or for worse? And I even said it in the beginning. Told the president of the record label I needed to know what brand of asshole I'm dealing with. Because then we can put them in a position to be the best version of what it is that they are. Not untrue, best version. So that's this piece, that's this fundamental understanding that I think changes the narrative, changes how we approach it. And it makes it so much richer and so much more sustainable, because we're not manufacturing systems to hold up a mask. We're manufacturing systems to project, to portray what's true. Can we do that? Because I think what's true is inherently what's meaningful. Because when I sit down with an artist, when I sit down with a business owner, when I sit down with my children, when I sit down with my friends, what they want is they want me to meet with the person, not the performance. That's what they want. They don't want me to meet with the idea of them. They want me to meet with them. I don't want clients to meet with the idea of me. I want them to be able to see in a meaningful, clear, and sometimes vulnerable way what this it really is, what I really am, what I really do, what the value that I really bring. I want them to see that, and I am only going to get there if I'm willing to see them in that same light. And once I stopped reading decks, once I stopped reading websites, once I stopped reading one sheets, I stopped being impressed by the wrong things. Because the truth is, it never really looks like the slides. Never really does. It always looks different. You know those TV shows where they make the home makeovers? And whenever you see that home makeover in real life, you start to see all the seams and all the edges. All of the margins. And what if there's power in those margins? I think there's power in those margins. I really do think that that's the truth. And my goal in those conversations is that I want to trust what I notice first. If I meet the person, if I hear them, if I see them, if I seek to understand them before I seek to communicate, then they win and I win. And on some level, I want to trust what I notice first. I want to trust that. Because discernment, it's not just instinct. I think that sometimes we think is like, again, I even said this at the beginning of this episode. I talked about that I'm an empath, that I feel and sense and try to understand those things. Yes, it is. But I think that it's not just instinct. It is a thing that I have intentionally cultivated for the last 25 years. And maybe I cultivated it before then. But I know that I've cultivated it over these years. And in that, my instinct is sharpened, my ability is sharpened, and it's gotten me into a place where in those conversations, can I, and somebody actually said this to me the other day, and it's echoed in my head, can I synthesize all this information into a meaningful conversation? There's tremendous value in that. These are the things that we really want to see. And it's not just about vibes. The point is not walking into a meeting unprepared. Let me be really clear when I say this. It's not about walking into a meeting unprepared. I'm not trying to present this as walk in cold to make it easy. I'm actually saying walk in cold to make it true. And that's harder. That's harder because with every person we meet, there are preconceived notions that we have about them from the minute that we see them. Can I listen long enough to press through those preconceived notions? Can I listen long enough to hear the things that they're actually saying? Can I press through and help to translate those things? Because even in the translation, there's tremendous meaning. And I'll say this, total rabbit trail. I think the next move in business, I think one of the really valuable roles in business, in relationships, in friend groups, in ideas, I think a really valuable role in that is the translator. And I'll use this in the business context right now. Companies right now are building these silos of information that are very, very specific. They're very, very detailed. They're very, very specific. They have very, very specific structures and strategies. And they've built this silo. They've built big, thick, tall walls around that specific silo. And companies are building silos even within their own companies. Here's the silo that does this. Here's the silo that does marketing. Here's the silo that does biz dev. Here's the silo that does engineering. Here's the silo that does all these things. And within those silos, one of the things that I'm watching happen in businesses is that those silos are actually contributing to the disconnect, because even within the business, it's almost like we're creating multiple personality disorder, even within the companies. And we're watching this vacuum the translators need to step into. The people that can listen and begin to discern and understand what needs to be understood. I hope that makes sense, because it's a departure from from some of what I'm talking about today, but I think it lines up with the goal of this episode. And I want to hit on 4 things as I kind of wrap this up. There are 4 things that I want to restate here. The first one is, what is true is more important than what is said. And that may sound like Yoda talk. I'm saying this thing that is unfathomable. But I want to restate it again, and I want to be willing, and I would encourage you to be willing to consider, what is true is more important than what is said. Presence reveals what preparation hides. And I don't want us to swing, because in every conversation we have, there's this tension to follow the flow of the pendulum and kind of overreact to anything. And when I say presence reveals what preparation hides, I think it's easy to go, okay, I'm throwing preparation out. No, not the point. Here's the continuum that all these things can exist in. And the goal is for the continuum to tighten up in a way that, yes, we are preparing, but we're preparing with the intent of being revelatory. Does that make sense? We're preparing so we can say the thing that's true. We're preparing so we can say the thing that's honest. We're preparing because we want to do the work on the inside. We want to ask the questions on the inside. We want to ask the questions in the quiet places that actually reveal what really truly matters to us. That's where preparation is. Preparation is not applying the wax and polish. Preparation is doing the inside things, the quiet things, so that when the time comes for the wax and polish, that it's revealing the things that are deep. Really obvious point. People will show you who they are if you let them talk. And I'm trusting that that's true even with this podcast. Hopefully you're getting a snapshot of the way that I think and the way that I approach things and what really matters to me. And I know that I have this list of things that really matter to me, and they're not the things that matter to everybody else. That's okay. This is what matters to me. This is where I say it messy before anybody assumes it was neat, tidy all along. That's why this is here for me. This is my version of the journal. And lots of people do that journal in private. But as a verbal processor, as the person who thinks out loud, this is my version of that. And if you listen, I'll actually tell you what really matters to me. And I think that people really deeply desire that. And the final thing that I want to touch Decisions get better when you decide later. I get in a rush. And sometimes decisions have to be in the moment. Somebody's bleeding, somebody's hurt, something crazy has happened. I've been in those chaotic moments. I've been in those chaotic situations. But the chaotic situations don't affect my fundamental decision making. I've talked about this idea in the past of muscle memory. It's, as a piano player, it's sitting down for 30 minutes to an hour a day for my entire life from the age of 4 on and stacking up tens of thousands of hours sitting behind a piano. And as a result, when I put my fingers on the key bed, they know exactly where to go. Exactly. So when something crazy happens, when something catastrophic happens, my muscle memory kicks in and I know exactly how to respond to it. That doesn't change anything about these simple signals all along the way that helped me to get to the point of knowing how to respond in the chaos. And my fundamental decision is that decisions get better when I decide later. It's sitting down with my 16-year-old and he says something that drives me crazy and I go, I need to not overreact in this moment. Give me a minute. Or telling him, hey, go take a minute. Think about what you said. Think about what we're talking about. And let's come back and talk about this in a few minutes. Because those are decisions that you can make later and your decision will be better. So I think my fundamental thoughts in this episode distills down to listen longer, decide better. And this is where I say it messy before you assume it was tidy all along. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.